everybody. Welcome to Life Stories Podcast, People Helping People. I'm Shara Goswick, your host. My guest today is Kathi Miracle, who is a dementia expert and the founder of Silver Tsunami Aging Info. Kathi helps family members and people who have been diagnosed with dementia in so many different ways. She has lots of resources and lots of wisdom and has a new book coming out this fall. I love talking to Kathi. You know, this is a subject that you don't really talk about unless you have to talk about it. And I think what she's doing is very important. She's bringing awareness and she is teaching people not to be afraid, but how to deal with this diagnosis. I think this is a great conversation. It's important to listen to, and I'm glad that you're here. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today. I love what you're doing because I think it's very important. And I think it's something that is not always talked about unless, you have a family member that is facing dementia or you yourself are going through it. It's not something that is just, talked about very often, but it's very important when you find yourself in that situation. So I know you have developed the Silver Tsunami Aging Information, but why did you ever decide to get into this area of, working with this group of people?
When I was young, I didn't know what dementia was, and I had grandparents who passed away before I was born and grandparents who passed when I was super young. And so my parents would tell me I would gravitate to older adults in our neighborhood, at church, grocery stores. I just kind of loved being around them and hearing their stories. And I attended the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. And at that time, they had one of the top 10 gerontology programs at the master's level. And so I was super lucky to go through it when I did. And so I have my master's in gerontology with an emphasis in dementia and elder abuse. While I was getting my master's, I was encouraged to start building my resume. And so I trained to be a certified nursing assistant at a local nursing home. And I had always just been super intrigued about what happens to the brain with dementia. And so I requested to be on that unit, which nobody ever requested. More people requested to get off the unit than on.
Right.
And so I, at 22 years old, started working with people with dementia. But at that time, there also wasn't the big names in dementia care.
Right.
So I was trained how to bathe and how to dress and how to feed and how to transfer, how to evacuate a building, how to change linens with somebody still in the bed. But I was never trained how to approach or de-escalate or redirect. So at 22, I was also hit and kicked and punched and scratched and thrown into a wall and ribs were broken. And I did it all wrong. And so as I continued my career in senior living, I just made a commitment that I didn't want my staff getting injured. And so I just learned how to do it the right way. I delved into studying the brain and what happens when it's damaged and why do behaviors happen. And I got to a point where I was ranked as the third top expert in the state of Colorado in dementia care. And how I got there, I don't know. If I'm still there, I don't know. But what I did know was that I had a solid reputation in Denver that I would take behaviors. And it really wasn't about taking behaviors. It was that my staff was trained not to trigger them and we could be proactive and not reactive. And so I've always said that people either love working with dementia or they hate it. And the only in between is the families who have to travel that path because they have no choice.
Right. That's impressive for you to be that young and be so interested and fascinated with that, with dementia and the people that are facing that, because that's very young.
It was, I mean, I look back and think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Right.
I made I think I got to be as good as I am only because I made so many mistakes and I learned what not to do. And so I had to learn if I was going to stay safe and keep my team safe, I had to learn what to do. And so I honestly was very lucky to go through a program when I did. I was very lucky to work for the companies that I did because I learned a lot at a very young age.
Yeah. I am also thankful for people like you who choose to work in the nursing homes and places like that. My husband is a physical therapist and he's had to do different rounds, in places like that. And it's, it is for some people and it's just not for others. And so I'm thankful that there are people like you that want to do that. So tell me, I have a lot of questions about this, but tell me first about the Silver Tsunami Aging Information. What is that and who is it for?
So Silver Tsunami Aging Info was founded, it has been talked about with lots of family, my husband, friends of mine, for years that I needed to just have my own company and
Yeah.
quit working for everybody else and start my own company and do it the way I wanted to do it. And so we launched Silver Tsunami last fall, and it was really, truly, it started out being designed for family caregivers. My years that I spent in senior living, I could have easily probably coached so many families to say, you could keep them at home if you did these things, or
Yeah.
they're not really ready for a community because if you did these things, they still have a better quality of life. And of course, that wasn't my role at the time. My role was to fill senior living. And as I continued to watch and work with so many families, I thought, if they just knew, and so I would look at there, and there's so much information out there. It's not that there's not a lack of information. Sometimes I think there's so much information, it's
Yeah.
a little overwhelming. And so I hesitantly was like, well, I don't know if I want to be one more confusing thing out there or if it's designed a certain way, are we going to be the one thing that has all information located in one spot? So it's a
Yeah.
one click or a one question or a one community that people will feel that we have the guidance, the support, and the information. And so that's really what it became was
Yeah.
to really help family members focus on this journey and provide them very solid information and practical tips and things that I know aren't on other websites because it was my mistakes that led us to those solutions and
Right.
we figured it out on our own. And so it has since then even evolved into I get so many requests from professionals for continuing education and to come and train professional staff
Wow.
and to do community educations. And I'm now also a nationally approved subject matter expert. So I work in legal cases as well. So
Yeah.
it evolved to a lot more than we started
Sure.
out with, but the bottom line was to just, whether you're a professional or whether you're a family caregiver, to be able to help them through that journey a little easier.
Yeah. That's so important. What are some signs of cognitive decline that maybe families miss? Maybe they can look back and see, but don't pay attention to in the beginning.
Well, for all of us, so our the neural pathways in our brain are coded with what's called myelin sheath.
Hmm.
Myelin sheath actually starts breaking down for everybody in our late 30s and our early 40s.
Yeah.
And the thinner it is, or the more damage it has, like I refer to like potholes, the harder it is for the brain to send a message from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So jokingly, when I train or I talk at conferences, I'll say, how many of you have opened a refrigerator and you don't know if you were putting something in or taking something out, or you walk into a room and you're like, what did I walk in
Oh,
here for?
yeah.
The challenge becomes that it happens to all of us because the
Yeah.
myelin breaks down, that it just happens to all of us. Um, the problem becomes is that when we see it start happening in our loved one or in an individual, we excuse it away because it happens to us. So we think,
Right.
oh, they're just having a senior moment, or oh, they didn't get a good night's sleep, or oh, they haven't really had a lot to eat today. And
Yeah.
we find reasons to excuse those early warning signs away. Dementia is the second most feared diagnosis in the world.
Right.
And people, I think, hear that diagnosis and they immediately jump to the end of the disease. And there's so much living and memorable moments in between those 2 points. So because they're so scared of this type
Yeah.
of a diagnosis, they excuse it more and more and more, or they
Yeah.
don't want this to be the path that they're going down. When those early warning signs and those early part of this journey is really where medications can be most effective. My team and I have jumped in and we've been able to reverse cognitive decline. We've been
Wow.
able to delay the progression of a cognitive decline, but I have to be able to jump in the beginning and
Yeah.
not the middle or not the end. And so as much education I can give families, like when you start seeing these things, there are things that we now know that can be
Yeah.
implemented and done. And but I still see people who will excuse it away because it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
What I tell people too is that the good news is myelin sheath never stops growing. It can grow up until the
Wow.
moment we pass away. And the thicker it is, the faster the brain will send messages. And so we now know that there are things that can be done to help protect cognitive health,
Yeah.
but the early warning signs are crucial for us to jump in when we need to.
Right. What are some of those things that can help?
So there are six, it's a lifestyle program. I
Okay.
call it a lifestyle program, and it's one that Silver Tsunami has implemented and had success with. Um, I started it back in January of 2015. My mom was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, and I was learning a lot more about the brain and cognitive strengthening and all those things. So the lifestyle program, that there's six parts to it. Um, Diet is one. We now know that if it's healthy for the heart, it's healthy for the brain.
Yeah.
If we're eating something that's causing inflammation, it'll cause inflammation in the brain. So white sugar is one of the worst things we can consume, although our society is filled with it all over the
Yeah.
place. Like a heart healthy diet, a Mediterranean diet,
Yeah.
those are the diets that should be followed. Hydration. We need to be drinking at least 60 ounces of water every day. We should not be drinking more than half our body weight in ounces. I will work with people who will say, oh, I drink a gallon of water a day. And I'm like, yeah, you're also flushing away a lot of minerals and vitamins
Yeah.
that your body needs. So there's a balance in the hydration. Sleep is super important. We now
Yeah.
know that sleep deprivation does a lot of damage to the brain. It causes the brain to shrink, actually, and it
Yeah.
makes it more difficult. So it's not about the quantity of sleep that somebody gets. I mean, I'll listen to people talk about, they get 8 hours of sleep, 9 hours of sleep, but they still don't feel rested. It has a lot more to do with the quality of
Right.
sleep we get. And so being in a deep sleep or a REM sleep, and that needs to be the majority of your sleeping hours. So if you're sleeping six
Sure.
hours, it really should be 3.5 to 4 hours. If you're sleeping 8 hours, it should be around
Yeah.
5 to 6 hours of deep sleep. So that sleep is super important. Socialization. The
Oh, yeah.
challenge with this becomes when people start recognizing they can't keep up in a conversation or they don't understand, they start to isolate themselves. Or a term that's used in this industry is cocooning.
Mm.
They will cocoon, and then they're not getting the socialization that they need, and that's exactly what they do need because the brain listen, like the auditory processing and auditory memory and the visual processing and the visual memory are all components in how we communicate. And so we
Oh,
want to continue exercising those skills. Kind of the phrase, if you don't use it, you lose it, will
right.
happen. And so unfortunately, people do the opposite and they start cocooning or self-isolating, and we lose that socialization piece.
Mm.
Getting oxygenated blood to the brain is super important. So anything cardio, walking, running, riding a bicycle, water aerobics. I will add, because I know a lot of people don't get the amount of oxygenated blood to the brain like they should, I'll
Right.
add in deep breathing exercises so that
Mm.
they learn to do that. I tell people even short bursts of things where if you are walking in place very quickly, I can walk in place and get my heart rate up to about
Yeah.
120 beats a minute. And I'll do these 5 to 10 minute short bursts throughout the day. That is even super helpful. You don't have to dedicate an hour to go for a
Right.
walk. It'd be great if you have the time. But
Yeah.
I try to show people how to fit this into a busy schedule. And then cognitive exercising.
Yeah.
There are so many programs out there now that can help people with cognitive exercising. There are intense one-on-one programs out there that can help them. I often get asked, well, I play Sudoku on my phone, am I exercising my brain? And the answer is usually, well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Um, it's like if you went into the gym and only did bicep curls and walked out, are you
Right.
exercising your body? Well, you're exercising the biceps, but nothing else. So you're
Yeah.
exercising a part of the brain, but the goal is to exercise every single part of the brain in a 7 day period of time. And the other thing is that when people are playing games on their phones or their tablets, they tend to gravitate to what they love and enjoy. And that's
Right.
usually already the stronger part of the brain, not the weaker part of the brain. And
Wow.
so by combining those six different things into a consistent lifestyle program, what we've been able to identify is that it can delay the progression of dementia, and in some circumstances, it can reverse cognitive decline.
That's amazing. And those are all, I mean, it's work, but those are all easy things to change. It's not like and really we should all be doing those things,
We should.
you
It's,
know?
yeah,
We
we
really
should.
should.
I have had people quit because they say, you won't let me drink my beer. I go, no, you can drink your beer, you just can't drink it every day. Or you
Right.
can have a brownie, you just can't have five every day.
Right.
It's
Balance.
all about moderation and balance, right? So
Sure.
it's
Sure.
not rocket science.
Yeah.
But when those six things are combined, we can protect and maintain cognitive health.
That's amazing. What are some big misconceptions that people have about dementia?
Big misconceptions. I think that when it comes to couples, one of the things that I educate a lot on is I redefine wedding vows. I see couples
Mm.
who have been married, 40, 50, 60 years, in one circumstance, 66 years, and they thought that they had to honor the wedding vows they took in front of God, family, and friends X amount of years ago. And telling them, there's nowhere in the Bible that it says you have to do this alone. You
Right.
by building a solid network. People don't build solid networks. They don't take care of the legal, financial, medical decisions they should early
Yeah.
on. I think there is a big misconception of when someone is taking care of another person that it's done because they out of love. And more often than not, I have found it is done out of obligation and duty, which
Yeah.
increases problems with domestic violence, whether the person with
Mm.
dementia is acting out or the caregiver is acting out or both. And there is very little to almost no research done on domestic violence between individuals who are
Huh.
caring for and have a dementia diagnosis. It's
Wow.
very difficult to find information. So the misconception about it too, especially with couples, is that because they excuse it away, they'll say, he or she is just asking all those questions to drive me crazy. I'm like, no, no, that's not what's
Yeah.
happening. I've seen people who thought, okay, so if dad comes here and rehabs for 6 months, he'll be better. It's like, well, no, because once you get to a certain point in the dementia
Right.
journey, it's just going to continue to be a cognitive decline. I unfortunately was the deliverer of news at one point where the person would eventually pass away
Mm.
and from complications of the dementia,
Oh,
and
wow.
either the doctor didn't tell the family or the family didn't hear the information when it was told. And that was super uncomfortable too, because
Yeah.
I had already thought the doctor had given that information. So it depends on the family. It depends on the family dynamics. It depends on the type of dementia as to what are the misconceptions. But those are some of the big ones. And the biggest, I
Yeah.
think, misconception I see is that people think that by the time they get to middle to late stages of dementia, that the person no longer has cognitively alert moments. And so
Yeah.
they're lied to, or a lot of things are done or said, and that's absolutely not true. People can have
Right.
cognitively alert moments up until the very end.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who just found out that their parent or their loved one was diagnosed with dementia? What's the first thing they should be doing?
I would tell them the very first thing they should be doing is getting legal paperwork in order, because you want to be able to sign that while a person can still understand what they're signing.
Right.
If they wait, and I have seen families wait on that, then they have to pursue conservatorship or guardianship through the courts, and it can take time and it can be costly.
Yeah.
So getting legal paperwork in order, getting financial paperwork in order, understanding because this is not a cheap journey. There
Right.
are additional things that will have to be purchased, from medical equipment to support to respite care to possibly senior living. So understanding the finances, medical decisions, like does the person want to be resuscitated, or what are their
Right.
advanced wishes? So those are all very needed conversations, even hospice conversations. I've had families. I had a son who didn't want to sign our paperwork because he didn't want to play God with his mom, and they
Mm.
had never had the conversation of what her wishes were, and he was just
Gosh.
scared that he would make the wrong
Yeah.
decision, so he froze. And so having the necessary conversations, I will say learn as much as you can about the dementia journey, what your local resources are,
Yeah.
and build your network, because there's many individuals, whether it is a child, a spouse, a grandchild, so many people believe that they can do this on their own.
Yeah.
And um, oftentimes what I would tell people is, when you move them into a community, it looks easy because they have 3 shifts. They don't do it 100% by themselves 24 hours
Right.
a day. And we're no longer trying to compare to who they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. We just love
Yeah.
and honor and respect who they are today. So having a solid network built, knowing your resources, learning as much as you can, getting all those things taken care of, keeping a journal, keeping a binder with all the information in it so you can access it quickly if you
Yeah.
need to. There's a lot of important steps to take in the beginning once you know that there's a diagnosis.
What about a caregiver? So they're beginning all those things and all the practical things that they need to be doing. How do they take care of themselves during this process?
That is one of the things I actually emphasize a lot in my trainings and in my coaching is I usually will start with, how many people here when they were growing up said, "Oh, please, I want to be the caregiver to someone with dementia when I retire."
Right.
And people laugh because no
Yeah.
one ever has that on their wish list. And then I also will say, how many people have flown on a plane? And there's usually almost every hand goes up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when we actually pay attention to what the flight attendants are saying, one of
Right.
the things they say is if the cabin pressure drops, oxygen masks will fall from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And the very first thing you do is you put it on yourself before you start to help
Yeah.
others. And so the airlines know the importance of self-care, but somehow we forget that when we're caring for other people. And so first and foremost, I encourage people to schedule it,
Yeah.
because if you have an appointment with a doctor or a mechanic, you're not going to miss those appointments because they're
Right.
important. Right. And so many times what I find is caregivers are trying to fit it in. They're trying to fit in a nap. They're trying to fit
Yeah.
in going for a massage. They're trying to fit it in. And lo and behold, something will take precedence and that gets backburnered or canceled completely. And so if we're scheduling it and it's on the calendar, it's just as important as the doctor's appointment or the mechanic.
Sure.
What should a person do? My answer to that is usually what feeds your soul? Because for some people, that is getting a pedicure. For some, it's a massage. For some, it's meditation or yoga. For some, it is going for a walk and listening to music and being one with nature. So, whatever it is that feeds your soul, then make sure you're scheduling that into your schedule at a minimum once a week, but at a maximum, if you can get it in every few days or even daily, that's even better because if you're not going to take the time to take care of yourself, you won't be around to take care of
Right.
others. And the analogy I use is I will say, if you can think of yourself as a pitcher, and the fluid inside that pitcher is your energy, and the glasses that surround that pitcher are your responsibilities. Every time you pour your energy into your responsibilities, that fluid will go down and
Yeah.
deplete in the pitcher. If you don't take time to replenish that, you will burn out. You will hit a brick wall. You will bottom out. And like I said, if you're not taking care of yourself, there's no way you're going to be here to take care of the person who truly
Sure.
needs you.
That is so good. I read as I was reading through your stuff, you said that you had so many stories from working with these people over there. Some were sad, some were funny. What
Yeah.
is I know what is the most rewarding part of what you are doing? Because you've seen it all, probably.
Oh, I don't know that I've seen it all. I've seen a lot.
You've seen a lot.
I have absolutely seen a lot in my career. I think the most rewarding thing is what I train professionals to do is to look for memorable moments.
Yeah.
And so in part of my training, I'll ask, has anyone here had a perfect day? From the moment you woke up to the moment
Right.
you went to sleep, it was an absolute perfect day. Well, no, we
Right.
don't have it. Something usually happens, right?
Yeah.
So no, we don't have a perfect day. So the goal is never to create a perfect day for the person with dementia. However, we can create perfect moments, and that's the moments where we see them smile, or there's a twinkle in their eye, or they do remember something, and we
Yeah.
hold on to those and cherish those moments like they're gold. And so, if we can create a perfect moment for an individual, we usually can create 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of those a day. And
Yeah.
those are the moments that are heartwarming, and those are the moments that I've always held on to get me through to the next day, because we're going to have the challenging moments too. We're going to have the
Right.
frustrating and feeling overwhelmed. So being able to take a moment to just cherish those memorable moments,
Sure.
because they're few and far between as we travel through the dementia journey.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to tell me about?
So I am launching a book this fall.
Awesome.
Yeah, the name of the book is Your Ticket to Compassion, Navigating the
Oh,
Dementia
wow.
Experience. People can visit our website, mysilvertsunami.com, and you can pre-order it for a discounted price. But the book, I've often described this journey as and like an unknown amusement park, that some days the
Yeah.
ride is fun, some days the ride is scary. Some days you get off the ride and you're sick or you're nauseous, and there are days you don't want to go on the ride at all. So the entire book is themed around an amusement park and helping people with very solid information, tips and guidance that I've used, mistakes I've made, and what I've learned through the years, what not to do.
Yeah.
And so the goal of this book, both for family caregivers and professional caregivers, is to provide insight and provide little things. Because sometimes we think, when plan A doesn't work, now what is plan B supposed to be? But then when plan B doesn't work, now what am I supposed to do? And the book
Right.
offers a lot of different approaches and options to choose from so that families feel more supported and more secure traveling through this journey.
That's awesome. I will make sure I'll have your book info and your website and everything for people to find you whenever I
Thank you.
post this. But this has been great. Thank you so much. And I meant to tell you this at the beginning, but I love your last name. I think it's very cool. I'm sure
Yeah.
people probably comment it all the time, but I think it's amazing. I love it.
They do. I actually for a while there I went by my maiden name, which is Miller,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of jokes that come around the last name.
Right.
And it just like out in the front, I got to be Miller, but behind the scenes, everything had to be signed legally. And it
Right.
started feeling like I had multi-personality. So I'm too old and this is too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, I get most people remember my last name before they remember my first name.
Absolutely.
But yes, I do
Yes.
get a lot of comments on
I
it. And
love it. I think it's great. I thought,
thank
man, that
you.
is so cool to have that for a last name. So I think it's
Yeah,
beautiful. I think
I'm
it's
pretty proud of
wonderful.
it.
Yeah, well, good. You should be. Well, thank you so much, Kathi, for being a guest and for all that you have shared with us. I'm excited to share this conversation with everybody.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. Well, we will be in touch soon.
Okay, all right. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.